I wanted to talk with you about the lawsuits and other legal actions that you filed against the Trump administration. There's been 25 of them, and then you filed some other briefs in support of other suits. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of doing that?
Yeah, so we are filing these lawsuits whenever the federal government violates the Constitution or harms the state of Arizona. So when you add up the amount of money that we've been able to save for the state of Arizona through those 25 lawsuits, it comes to $1.5 billion. And that's $60 million per lawsuit if you're doing the math. And that's money that if I hadn't filed that lawsuit on behalf of the state of Arizona against the Trump administration, Arizona would have lost. And so if they do something that's unconstitutional, if they do something that is unlawful, and they do something that harms the state of Arizona, then I'm going to file that lawsuit. That's my job. I took an oath to uphold the American Constitution, and I'm going to keep doing it if I have to. I wish I didn't have to. It's not on my bucket list to sue Donald Trump, but it is my job to protect Arizonans.
And then some folks here in Arizona have said that we shouldn't be filing suits like that because Arizona voted for President Trump. What do you think about that argument?
Well, they also voted for me, and they voted for me to protect them and to uphold the Constitution. And so, I think that they support what we're doing here at the AG's office because they know that we need things like Meals on Wheels, Head Start. We need to combat the fentanyl crisis and go after the Mexican drug cartels. All of those things, by the way, we protected with our lawsuits. Those are things that were going to be slashed by Donald Trump and his administration through an executive order illegally. And I think it's important to remember how illegal and unconstitutional the things that he's doing right now, by and large, are. Congress already had passed the funding for all of those things that we protected, that $1.5 billion for Head Start, Meals on Wheels, combating the drug trafficking crisis that we have in Arizona. That was passed by Congress. And no president, whoever they are, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican, can swoop in and with the stroke of a pen, erase what Congress has done.
And Congress, of course, has not taken any action to protect any of this funding.
Yeah.
Can you talk about just the challenges of trying to file these lawsuits to protect that funding when Congress has really ceded that?
Yeah, Congress is AWOL. They are nowhere to be found in this fight for their own authorities and their own prerogatives. And, you know, the AGs who are filing these lawsuits, and it's entirely Democrats right now, 23 Democratic AGs, believe that it is incumbent upon us, it's important for us to stand up for the Constitution and to prevent this harm to Arizonans from happening. And so a good example is the $132 million in education funding that we saved for our schools that would have been ripped away from our schools right before school started if I hadn't filed that lawsuit. And so we are protecting our states. Those Republican states with Republican AGs are not getting that protection. It's very sad to see them get harmed in this way, but they don't have an AG who's fighting for them. I'm going to fight for Arizonans every single day of the week.
And can you talk a little bit about just, you've mentioned how much money this has saved for the state. Can you talk about how much money filing these lawsuits has cost Arizona?
So compared to the amount of money that we have saved through the lawsuits, again, it adds up to about $60 million per lawsuit that we have saved for Arizona. It's a drop in the bucket that we've had to spend. maybe a couple $1 million in total salaries for the lawyers who are filing those lawsuits, including me. So my salary goes into that number. But we are the ROI, the return on investment that we're getting for these lawsuits is massive, and it's massively more than we're having to spend on the lawsuits. There's a human cost to it. I will say that we are working very hard here at the AG's office to uphold the Constitution, the rule of law, to make sure that Arizonans aren't harmed by the federal government right now, and to try to be a bridge, try to get us through to a saner time. But when you look at the things that they have tried to cut, whether it is law enforcement, they literally tried to defund our police here in Arizona, whether it's Meals on Wheels or education funding or funding for our universities or funding for community health centers, that was on the chopping board. We believe, and I believe, that it is absolutely critical that we file these lawsuits to protect that funding.
And then can you talk a little bit about just, of course, the president this morning took some action against Washington, D.C. My understanding is he can do that for 30 days, and then he needs the assent of Congress. How do you feel about operating in the type of environment where the president is really, making moves to intervene in local law enforcement, whether that's in D.C. or even in Los Angeles?
I think it's totally unacceptable, and I don't want to see it in the state of Arizona. If what happened today or what's happening today in D.C. were to happen in Arizona, I can tell you there would be a fight on their hands. And I don't think local law enforcement here in Arizona, I know local law enforcement in Arizona doesn't want that help, and we don't need it. And it's ironic that a president who refused to call out the National Guard on January 6th during the insurrection and the attack on the Capitol is now calling out the National Guard for a fake and totally non-existent emergency in Washington, D.C. And I certainly hope that he doesn't try to do something like that here in Arizona. It would not be accepted by this individual sitting right here, the top law enforcement officer in Arizona. And I know it wouldn't be welcomed by our police chiefs or our sheriffs. They don't need the help. We have the situation under control. What we could use some help with is additional DEA agents, which I have asked the president for and we haven't gotten. What we could use a little bit of help with is, helping us bring down cartel drones. We had to take matters into our own hands, and during this last legislative session, there's a lot of things we could use from Washington, D.C. that we're not getting. Instead, we're getting these sort of manufactured crises and, troops in the cities, which is about as un-American as it gets.
And then what are you hoping to see from these lawsuits as they move through the courts? Because of course it's a very slow process. Something you file in February may still be, hung up with maybe just a TRO right now.
So, yeah, I think the important thing is that we are getting those temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions. And so we are stopping, I would say, about 75% of the bad stuff that is coming out of Washington, D.C. In other words, the stuff that's harming Arizonans. And then, so we get it stopped initially, and then, as you know, it'll work its way through the court system. The other thing that we are doing, that I am doing, is co-leading the lawsuit against the tariffs. That $1.5 billion figure doesn't even include the damage that we are trying to prevent associated with the tariffs. The tariffs are killing our small businesses in Arizona. They're killing medium and large sized businesses as well. And so I think that case is going to end up at the Supreme Court 100%, and I believe we're going to win it. So at the end of the day, we not only want to win the TRO, but we also want to win at the end of the day when the case finally goes to trial. If it ever does go to trial. What we are seeing in a lot of cases is we'll win a TRO or a preliminary injunction, and then the Trump administration just kind of quietly goes away.
Can you talk about any of the cases in specific that that's happened with?
That's a good question. So, I mean, a good example of that would be the funding freeze. Yeah, I guess that's probably and a big example was the when one of the first TROs that we won against the Trump administration was against them on the federal funding freeze. They were going to, and that was something north of $1 billion in funding for the state of Arizona that we would have lost. Again, Meals on Wheels, Head Start, combating the drug cartels, all of that was wrapped up in that. We filed that TRO and ultimately they dropped it. So we got it stopped, and then, sometimes they realize that what they're doing is blatantly unconstitutional. They're not going to win in court. A federal judge has spoken, or maybe an appeals court has spoken, and then they say, okay, they wave the white flag.
And then what would you like Arizonans to know about these cases?
I want Arizonans to know that this is not about politics. This is about people and protecting the people of Arizona. And it wouldn't matter if it was a Democratic president, I would still be filing these lawsuits. It is my job to make sure that whoever is president doesn't engage in unconstitutional behavior that harms the state of Arizona. And those are really my two biggest criteria. Does it harm the state of Arizona? Has the president violated the Constitution or the law? That's what I use to make my decision about whether I file a lawsuit. I haven't joined all of them. We've done 25. There have been, I think, maybe 40 total lawsuits by Democratic AGs, so I have not joined all of them, but I join them and lead them sometimes when Arizona has been clearly harmed.
And then looking at the birthright citizenship case, that's one that, affects almost every family in some way. Can you talk a little bit about just the importance of that case?
I don't think you can overstate the importance of the birthright citizenship case. This is about who is an American and who isn't an American. It's about the Constitution and what the 14th Amendment says, which is that all people born in the United States are citizens of the United States. Nothing could be more clear than that. And yet the president issued an executive order that essentially tried to write out of existence the entire 14th Amendment, or at least a part of the 14th Amendment. And that's not okay. And it's not okay because of the chaos that it would cause in Arizona and every other state if you eliminated birthright citizenship, or if you eliminated birthright citizenship in some states and not in other states. So you can imagine a scenario in which if we were to win our lawsuit, I don't think this would actually happen, but if we were to win in the 23 states that filed the lawsuit, but Texas didn't file the lawsuit, a baby born in Texas is not a citizen, but a baby born in Arizona is a citizen, and how are we supposed to deal with that administratively? And then what about how do you prove your citizenship, in the hospital? Who's supposed to decide that? I think about when I had my baby. Am I supposed to bring my birth certificate to the hospital? Am I supposed to bring my parents' birth certificates to the hospital? Is the hospital supposed to be the judge of whether my parents were citizens and I'm a citizen? It's not the way it should work, and it's not the way the Constitution says it works.